I know that kid. He goes to school at the Valley.
I don't know. He looks suspicious to me. Let's see what he's up to.
Two Middle Eastern males dressed in robes, last seen walking in the park near Edison Western Power Plant.
Copy 10-4 en route. Let's go check it out.
And you keep speeding up with no regard for anyone around you. You know what? You people shouldn't even be allowed to drive, okay? Asians don't even know how to drive.
Everything checks out with this dude, man.
So we're gonna cite him?
Yeah, we're gonna cite him, but I'm also gonna ask him to search his car.
Why, did you see something in there?
No, but I just got a funny feeling about this dude. I want to check him out a little bit.
I'm coming from school.
And where are you going?
I'm just trying to go home.
And I'm trying to figure out why you're harassing him.
It's important for an officer to realize that every individual has personal biases, personal prejudices, and personal stereotypes. But being able to recognize that and understand that that has no application in terms of the daily job, in terms of conducting searches, in terms of contacting individuals is what's important.
We're not turning over rocks looking for racists. We're talking about biases that everyone has that are to some extent natural.
So 13519.4 of the Penal Code mandates that every police officer in the state of California has to have training in the area of racial profiling. And this curriculum is a part of that. You can still go out there and make arrests. You could still go out there and have an impact on crime. But you got to be doing it the right way. We are custodians of the value system, and we're held to a higher degree. We cannot violate people's rights.
Bias-based policing, in its simplest terms, is just the use of biases that everybody has in making law enforcement decisions. So relying on assumptions that everybody has about race, gender, national origin, and other protected classifications to make decisions about law enforcement where that's not appropriate. And it's usually not appropriate in any circumstance except suspect descriptions, physical suspect descriptions.
I don't think we can stop from having these thoughts if we're human, but it's a process of examining them. It's an ongoing process of being aware.
What is it that drives our decision making? And typically bias can play out most often in decisions that we make that involve discretion.
Bias-based policing is anything where policing is done with a particular bias towards people, lifestyles, origin.
It's perfectly acceptable to have a bias in your mind. But when you put that uniform on, you can never, ever act on that bias.
The simple reality is that law enforcement officers are supposed to reflect the highest standards of society. And as such, we can't allow any of our personal biases as officers to affect the decisions we make or the actions we take in dealing with the public or enforcing the law. We have to enforce the law equitably, regardless of any personal belief or any personal bias about a particular individual.
The ultimate responsibility on whether it's happening or not is with the individual officer. And the only way that that officer can know whether or not they're doing it is through a constant self-assessment. And that self-assessment will only happen if they get the education and if they continue to push themselves into areas where they might not be comfortable going.
The goal of law enforcement is to remain fair and impartial. Yet the topic of bias-based policing is a complex one. The original training mandate, titled Racial Profiling, was taught throughout the state and contained a specific focus. That course is now part of the Basic Academy. This course meets the mandate for the 2-hour Racial Profiling Update. Over time, our discussion of the topic has expanded to include all protected groups, so although both terms are used, bias-based policing reflects our expanded focus. This course also provides a review of how our own personal bias may affect our day-to-day work in law enforcement. My name is Mark Bailey. I'm a former full-time and current reserve police officer, and I'll be your host for this training. The purpose of this training is for officers to recognize bias-based policing. Understand that we all have personal biases, but we must remain fair and impartial in our discretion and decisions. Segments of this training include legal considerations, biases, decision-making, the community, and resources. Also, be sure to review the Final Thoughts tab at the bottom of the main menu screen. This section provides closing thoughts on our topic.
Everything checks out with this dude, man.
So we're gonna cite him?
Yeah, we're gonna cite him, but I'm also gonna ask him to search his car.
Why, did you see something in there?
No, but I just got a funny feeling about this.
There are a number of legalities associated with bias-based policing. As peace officers, what do we need to know about the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution? How does the 14th Amendment dictate our law enforcement activities? And how does the Wren decision affect our day-to-day work? These legal precedents are all closely tied to policing, and they work together to drive our decisions. But as we'll see, sometimes a lawful fourth can become an awful 14th.
Hey, man, did you hear that we're getting extended tonight? Work late?
Unfortunately, I did, and that's going to be my third one for the week.
I'll have plans tonight, too.
Yeah, we all. So you also heard about, Sarge mentioned about the white vehicle involved in commercial burglaries. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah, I heard him bring it up.
What about the kid being hit in the intersection?
I heard something about that, too. He wants us to work that intersection, right?
Right, just looking for unlicensed drivers.
Okay, let's go do it.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. I'm exhausted, man. It's been a long week, but I'm looking forward to the weekend. What do you got going on this weekend?
You know what? Nothing really, but anything is better than working traffic since there's nothing else going on around here.
I know, it's quiet as heck out here today. I don't know what's going on.
No cars, no traffic. The park's busy.
I keep looking at the radio to see if it's even working, but man, there's just no calls coming in at all.
Is it even turned on?
Yeah, it's on.
Oh.
Hey, did you see that right there? That's a good stop. Let's go get it. Good afternoon, sir. The reason why I pulled you over is because you didn't stop at the stop sign back there. You blew right through it. I need to see your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance, please.
Okay. There's the driver's license, insurance, and registration there.
Thank you. I'll be right with you, okay?
Okay.
Hey, partner.
What's up?
Everything checks out with this dude, man. His license is valid, insurance is up to date, registration is good.
So we're gonna cite him?
Yeah, we're gonna cite him, but I'm also gonna ask him to search his car.
Why, did you see something in there?
No, but I just got a funny feeling about this dude. I want to check him out a little bit.
We stopped 4 cars today, and you didn't ask to search any of them. And plus, I need to make a station run.
Okay. Just give me 1 second to check this guy out real quick, all right?
Okay.
Just give me 1 second to check this guy out real quick, all right? Okay.
Okay, team, what do you think? It's a good stop?
It's a good stop.
It's a good stop. Okay. What about asking to go ahead and search the car? Is that legal?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Tell me, from a Fourth Amendment standpoint, we've trained in the Fourth Amendment a lot as cops. Understand the rules of search and seizure. From a Fourth Amendment standpoint, why is this a good stop?
Because you already broke a vehicle code violation. Therefore, you have the right to pull him over.
Something's giving him a suspicious feeling. So I don't see why he can't just act on the suspicious feelings, and if he gets consent from the driver, I don't see anything wrong with it.
Okay. And by suspicious feeling, what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, I guess, every officer has that. The little hairs on the back of your neck go up and, makes you believe that maybe, I should dig a little deeper into this person.
Okay. Can you expand on that a little bit? You guys want to talk a little bit more about that? Maybe what your thoughts are on what gives us that legal authority to detain somebody?
Well, if someone makes any kind of violation, whether it's an infraction, misdemeanor, felony, then we have the right to, we have probable cause to stop them and detain them for a reasonable amount of time for whatever we're investigating.
So now, sometimes do we make a traffic stop or a ped check because we see that minor violation, but maybe we're thinking there might be something else going on there?
Sometimes we do.
I think that's always the case. You want to dig deeper.
Okay.
Just the violation itself isn't necessarily, the bigger picture, I guess you can say.
I think that's not always the case for all officers, but I think for most officers and trying to do a good job, then yeah, that's the case. You're trying to look for something bigger.
Okay. We want our cops to be out there, be aggressive, look for violations, and then maybe look at that minor violation as a means to go ahead and stop somebody that might be committing something more serious. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. You guys ever do that? You say, I need to get in that car. There's something about that car. I want to stop them and check them out.
Yeah.
But you don't have any cause necessarily to begin with just based on what you're seeing. So what are you looking for?
Come up with that probable
Yeah,
cause.
some
Probable cause.
Yeah.
Right.
So what do you mean by what might you be looking for?
Just any type of, say, vehicle, if it's a car stop, any type of vehicle code violation that they commit to give you a reason to stop the vehicle.
Okay.
You're looking for a pretext stop.
Okay, pretext stop. Okay, it's a good choice of words. You guys heard that term before?
Yeah.
What's a pretext stop?
They use any violation that in order for you to detain that person.
Okay.
And from that detention, you have a probable cause to search, arrest the person or the persons.
Okay, so what you're saying then with the pretext stop is maybe we really want to get in that car or take a look at that person for a reason other than the violation that we see?
Correct.
Okay. Is it, even though that's our motivation, is it still legal for us to go ahead and stop and detain this person on a pretext stop?
Yeah. It's not a bad thing that you're doing that. It's just, like everybody's saying, you're digging deeper because you're looking for, a bigger crime. So there's nothing wrong with doing that.
I agree. There's nothing wrong with doing that. The law supports us in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Okay. We've all done pretext stops, right?
Yeah.
And we've all done it too, where you think that there's something more, and I stop this person for that violation or whatnot, and it turns out it was nothing, and then you're on to the next one.
But you never know unless
But
you
you
just
never
do
know,
it.
right?
Right. You never know unless you do it. So you guys feel good about what the Fourth Amendment says that we can do in regards to traffic stops?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So this stop here, good under the Fourth Amendment, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. What about the 14th Amendment? What do you guys know about the 14th Amendment?
What about it? You tell us, Sergeant.
Yeah, you can refresh my memory. on that one.
We only studied the Bill of Rights in 8th grade, right? We
I
went
got
through the first 10
1,
and that's
2,
it.
3, 4. That's about as far as I go.
Okay. Would you agree that we're pretty good as cops with the Fourth Amendment?
Yes.
Yes.
Because it's drilled into us.
Yeah, it's drilled into us. What do you mean it's drilled into us?
Well, you're constantly going over it. You're constantly being reminded. The laws are ever changing on it. Case law is constantly changing. So you're constantly reminded of the Fourth Amendment and the reasons, why we can or can't do things.
What the 14th Amendment basically says is that people cannot be deprived of their rights without due process. With those protected classes, people have equal protection under the law, regardless of their race, of their gender, of their sexual orientation, of their religion.
Even their nationality.
Even their nationality. Okay? So we can't take away their rights without due process, and we have to treat people equally under the law.
It's all coming back to me now.
You got that now, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Okay. It's a little bit more, it's not as straightforward, and it's not as fine line, you can do this, you can't do that, in general terms. That's what we think about with the Fourth Amendment is, okay, what can I do? When can I search? When can I stop, right? Okay. But with the 14th Amendment, we're thinking more in terms of people's rights and that we need to treat them equally. Okay. Now, certainly, we can't say, that guy's Hispanic, I'm going to stop him because he's Hispanic, right? Okay, that's clearly a violation. There's no crime, there's nothing. Even under the Fourth Amendment, that's a violation. Agreed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what about if I see another violation, but I say, you know what, that guy's Hispanic, I want to stop and talk to him because he's Hispanic, and look, he just made a traffic violation. Now, that's a pretty bright line example there. Is that legal?
No.
No.
But I have a traffic violation.
But you've already, before he even committed that traffic violation, you've already determined, hey, I'm going to stop this guy because he's Hispanic, and you can't do that.
Isn't that a pretext stop?
The intent is different.
Yeah.
What do you mean the intent is different?
Well, because you're intending to stop him because of his race. You're not intending to stop him because of criminal activity. I mean, it would be different if you said, I'm in a gang-related area. Say this is all a certain kind of Longo gang going on in this area. I see him driving out of that area, wearing gang attire. He's got his arm out the window. I see ESL or some kind of tattoo on his arm that says Longo, maybe more affiliating him to actual criminal activity. Then that would be different. He just happens to be part of a Hispanic gang. It has nothing to do because he's Hispanic, but your intent to stop him is because he's an actual gang member, probably doing criminal activity in the area, or might be related to criminal activity. It's not because he's just Hispanic and just driving down the street and it feels like, oh, why don't I just stop this guy and just bother him for absolutely no reason.
Good. So you can see where maybe we'd have a situation where we would be legal under the Fourth Amendment, but not legal under the 14th Amendment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The scenario with the traffic stop really starts with an officer's decision on what car to stop. That's a very subjective decision, which may be based on observations or it might be based on the ease of making the stop. But ultimately, when that officer stops this person, talks to him, contacts them, the officer makes a decision to search the car. And the question that needs to be asked is, why is the officer searching the car? Ultimately, the officer's the one that needs to ask himself the question. If he's got a hunch, where is that hunch coming from? Is he seeing something? If he's not seeing something, if he's simply doing it based on some sort of a bias, he needs to ask himself the question, what's motivating me here? And he needs to be very honest with himself.
I think what's important to note is, you really have to examine your reasons for stopping the car. Is it truly because of safety? Is it truly because it's easier to make a right turn? Is it truly because their violation was the most egregious of the group of cars that you saw?
The racial profiling, although a mandatory component of academy instruction, is substantially minimal in comparison to the training that trainees receive in criminal law. Criminal law is 99% Fourth Amendment, search and seizure. It is our bread and butter.
Hunches have to be explained and justified, articulated in more ways than one. I think when the officer says, I have a hunch, what he's really saying is, I have a intuition, a police intuition based on you'll hear experience and training, but it also could be of a bias.
What I've found in most cases is when an officer sees something or has the hair stand up on the back of their neck, it's probably because their training and experience is seeing something, and they just have to figure out what that is so it can be articulated on paper. And most importantly is if they've got that, they shouldn't be afraid to go with it, because that's what we're supposed to do. That's good police work.
And the best law enforcement officers I know have great hunches and great guts, and they should absolutely trust that. Now, that's a very different question. Should they pull somebody over because of a hunch? No. You can't do that. First of all, whatever evidence you find, that's going to be thrown out. And imagine the heartbreak of pulling someone over on a hunch without having that objective standard met, finding out that they perpetrated a terrible, horrible crime, and then having that case thrown out of court. So their gut can steer them in the right direction, but they have to meet that objective standard in order to pull somebody over.
So what I always say in regards to hunches is, seeing somebody, they look suspicious, you got a hunch, I ask them to complete the sentence. That person looks suspicious, or I've got a hunch about that person because what? Make the connection or nexus to criminal activity, something you can articulate, where their person's race is not playing a role in being targeted.
As a peace officer, oftentimes you'll have a hunch, a feeling, a personal intuition that a person or a situation may not feel right. These feelings or hunches are all invaluable parts of police work. We must, however, be able to question these hunches and determine the motivation or articulable facts behind them.
The basic lesson of the Fourth Amendment for officers in the field is they have to have sufficient reason to detain somebody, to frisk them, to search them. So they have to have good reason that's tied to the particular individual in question and the circumstances.
I think police officers do a great job at recognizing reasonable suspicion, probable cause, and articulating it, justifying this. However, when we look at the 14th Amendment, the 14th Amendment at its core is equal application of law, equal protection. And this is where I think it kind of gets fuzzy for most officers.
Regard to bias-based policing broadens that discussion, broadens that awareness to the point that it now includes, looking at biases that are both unconscious and conscious biases.
It's that video gives us a moment to see how subtle and how quickly any of us in law enforcement can go from doing an effective traffic enforcement to utilizing bias inappropriately to interact with the public and do our jobs.
In the academy, officers are taught U.S. Supreme Court Wren decision. It was an extremely strong case for law enforcement.
Wren decision at its core is about pretext stop, meaning that the motivation that you have for stopping this person, although you have a legal justification to do so, a traffic violation, that may not necessarily be the motivation for why you're stopping them. You're using that as a pretext.
What Wren ended up holding was that pretext stops in a certain situation are okay.
However, the law is very clear that although officers have a great deal of latitude and discretion in utilizing pretext stops under Wren, they still have to comply with the 14th Amendment.
The essence of what makes up how the 14th Amendment applies to law enforcement doesn't find its way into a report. It finds its way really in the thought process and the decision-making process that the officers go through before they ever make a contact, before they ever have to write a report, before they ever end up in court.
I'm hoping that most police professionals are able to take an introspective look at themselves, to recognize when their biases are impacting their ability to conduct impartial, fair policing.
If this officer wanted to conduct a search of the vehicle, then he needs to ask himself, what facts do I have to support a basis, a legal basis to conduct a search of this vehicle, aside from if the driver gives consent to search the vehicle? What facts did he have? And you'll find in that scenario that there really aren't any facts.
And you keep speeding up with no regard for anyone around you. You know what? You people shouldn't even be allowed to drive, okay? Asians don't even know how to drive.
Is everyone all right?
We're going so fast. Yes.
There's biases that we have that we know we have and that others know we have. There's bias that only we know we have, and that in honest conversations with ourselves that we can really lay those out. And then there's the bias that we don't know that's present in us. It's the unconscious bias that we constantly have to think about and explore our circumstances and really recount, okay, I went to that call, what was I thinking?
As we've discussed, everyone has personal biases. We, as law enforcement, must recognize these biases, acknowledge they exist, and check ourselves on a regular basis to ensure we are remaining fair and impartial and that our actions do not negatively affect our work or our standing in the community.
I have already contacted the buyer. Yes, I talked to him last night. Problem is, he wants a purchase price over $526. We only allow $526. We're going to go over that. We've got to put down 25% of the difference. And if he wants to put down 25% of the difference, he's going to cost you.
For call 12, non-injury accident with road blockage, 3755 North Kingswell
You just
Lane.
came barreling down the street.
I
going
did
so
not
fast
barrel
and
down.
ran right
What are you
into me.
talking about? I was just going down like 5 miles an hour.
You're not just going down. I was calmly backing out of my driveway.
Did you
no,
even
of
see
course
me?
I didn't.
saw you
That's
couldn't
why.
even have- you came out so fast. I
I
couldn't even
came
get
out
down.
perfectly slow. I came out like I always come out every morning, and you came
You did
speeding
not.
up with no
Wait a
regard
minute,
for
wait a minute.
anyone around you.
Down
You know what?
here.
You people shouldn't even be allowed to drive. Asians don't even know how to drive. Okay? Asians
What are you
don't even
talking
know
about?
how to drive.
What are you talking about?
Is everyone all right?
We're going so fast. Yes.
No one's hurt?
I'm all right.
Okay, do you mind stepping over here to the curb, please, with my partner, and I'll speak to you in just a minute, please?
Okay, good. Thank you. It's obvious who's at fault here. So I need you to write a report so that I can get to work. We can get her off the road.
Okay, is this your car, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell me what happened?
I got in my, that's my home. I walked out, I got in my car.
It's ridiculous.
So you're not injured at all?
No, I'm not, officer.
Okay.
Thanks.
So you're driving the Volkswagen Jetta?
Yeah, driving my Jetta.
And you were coming up the street this direction?
Yeah, like I normally do every day, going to work.
About how fast do you think you were going?
Can I see your license, insurance, and also your registration for the vehicle, please?
Sure.
And so she came out of this driveway right here?
Came out of this driveway.
But how fast were you going when you backed out of the driveway?
Just normal, just a
Okay.
normal backing out for work speed.
Were you on your cell phone when you pulled out?
No, I don't know what she's saying to him, but she was like blaming me. I can't believe she's blaming me for being Asian.
Hi, ma'am. Can you tell me what happened?
Okay, I'm just coming down the street like I normally do. I go this way every day for my work, and she just came out of nowhere. I was going really slow. She came out really fast. I didn't have time to react. That's about it. And then, now she's just like yelling at me, blaming me for being Asian and all sorts of crazy things.
Have we handled that call before?
Yes.
What do you guys see in this scenario?
Just a normal non-injury accident.
Okay. A normal non-injury accident? What do you mean by that?
Just a non-injury accident. It's going to be an insurance claim for them for the most part. If we find somebody at fault, they're given a ticket, we write the report, if that's what they want. If not, we can help them exchange information and leave it at that.
So let's go ahead and look at this from a different angle here. Do you see any biases that are being demonstrated in this scenario? Go ahead, you nod your head.
Say from the Caucasian driver, automatically, saying she's an Asian driver, she doesn't know how to drive, that all Asian drivers are bad. So obviously there's some bias on her behalf.
Okay. What was the officer's response to that?
He ignored it.
What do you mean he ignored it?
He didn't address it.
Is that a good thing that he didn't address it?
He's probably looking at it doesn't matter for the report what she said. So, because it's not actually a crime of what she said. So, it doesn't matter for the reporting purpose of it.
Okay, it didn't matter for the report.
We're not the bias police. So those are civilians and they're going to have biases, but they're not doing our job. So it's not my job to tell them to not be biased. It's my job to do what my job is, which is just determine what happened when they were driving and who I feel is at fault and do my report. I'm not going to tell them they can or can't say something.
Let me ask this. You mentioned we're not the bias police. So what I'm hearing from you is that it's not our job to go ahead and tell that woman, you're prejudiced, you're biased, you need to think this way. That's what I'm hearing from you. But does the other party, the Asian female, hear what this woman was saying?
Yes.
Okay. What questions might that raise in her mind about the way that we as law enforcement are going to go ahead and handle this call?
Even if you just take a second just to reassure her, ma'am, it's not going to have anything to do with this investigation. It has no relevance. What she said, was it wrong? Yes. But one, it's not against the law for her to say those things. And two, it's not going to have any determination on the traffic accident itself, or if I take a report, anything like that.
Okay. Why would it be important to go ahead and let that other party know that it's not going to have any determination on what we do or finding fault in the accident?
It just reassures her that there's not going to be, if she did have that notion of bias coming from the police, reassures her saying, okay, what she said, that's just her opinion. The officers aren't going to take that into account when they're writing the reports or determining who's at fault.
Okay. If we don't take just a moment and reassure this person that it's not going to go ahead and come into play, what might she be thinking? Thoughts on that?
Well, she just might be unsure, and she might think that if we don't make a comment on it or address it with her, she might think in the back of her mind that the officer is going to take the white lady's side just based on her statements.
Okay. Yeah, she might. She might think that. Okay. I know you said we don't have an obligation to go ahead and talk to the white driver in this case and tell her why her biases are wrong, or maybe why she's saying something which is inappropriate. But do we have an opportunity to, maybe?
Sure.
Sometimes it might help too to kind of like just get her to calm down so it doesn't like interfere with your investigation.
So if we want to take this opportunity to go ahead and address this woman's biases in order maybe to help out the investigation, what might we say to her?
Maybe that her comment was inappropriate, and it has nothing to do with the actual traffic accident. You know, just like I said, get her to calm down and just say, hey, you know, we're here for this. You know, we don't need to be speaking about that.
Okay, so maybe tell her comments inappropriate and redirect her to what we're doing. What else might we say to her?
Or even advise her that, ma'am, you're at fault for the accident.
That might.
There you go.
Yeah, that would probably do it, huh?
For unsafe backing.
Let her know she's at fault right off the bat. Is there something else we might say to her? I mean, look at different tactics or comments that you might use to go ahead and just point out that we're not going to go down that road and talk about this, and we aren't giving her comment any credence. What else might we say to her?
You may tell the person that my grandma, uncle, niece is that race, so you don't appreciate it.
Okay.
To kind of have her stop.
We got the sense from this scenario that these people live in the same neighborhood, right?
Yes.
And if we don't address this, if we don't maybe take this opportunity to point out why what she's saying may be offensive or incorrect, what impact might that have on these neighbors down the road?
They might have a constant feud with one another, back and forth.
Why might they have a constant feud?
Because they're going to be running into each other more than likely all the time.
And they're going to tell other neighbors. For example, the Asian may tell other Asian friends within the neighborhood, say, hey, the white lady around the corner is racist. Right. And they're all going to start looking at themselves sideways or crazy and may start other things.
Or she might tell her neighbors, hey, all these Asian drivers around here don't know what they're doing or whatnot, make some type of comment like that, and just it will create feuding and whatnot within the community right there.
And so what is that going to cause in the community? Is that going to cause more need for police services?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the important piece in that scenario for me was, you know, certainly everyone's got a right to free speech. Everyone's got a right to express their bias. We don't like it. We don't have to like it. We shouldn't like it, particularly when it plays out in that type of scenario.
Number one, an officer has the primary responsibility of making sure that any investigation they're handling is done fairly and objectively. And so when you have somebody who's stating a clear bias, that can't play into your decision making. Once that's done, the other part of what we saw in the fender bender scenario is that an officer has a responsibility not only to the community member who might be targeted through someone's bias, but to the person expressing that bias as well. We don't have to get into arguments with them, but we certainly have the opportunity to educate them in areas where they may be speaking out of line or might be saying something that's inappropriate.
I'm a strong proponent in silence is acceptance. And I think in that scenario, it would be a great opportunity not to be the biased police, but to allow this lady that during the course of my investigation, throwing around those derogatory terms is inappropriate and has no place in that situation.
In this particular one, I've been that officer, and the bottom line for me is that scenario at that moment no longer became anything to do with a traffic accident. That's 4 or 5 steps down the list of priorities. What's most important at that moment is to put out this fire that is brewing right now. So that interaction has to be addressed. And what I've done, what I've learned from not doing it correctly the first time, is that as soon as I show up and I hear words like that being addressed, I will immediately shut that person down, or both sides, and make sure they understand that that type of behavior is not acceptable. It's not going to help. It has nothing to do with the accident, and I don't care.
I don't think it takes much to at least remind the lady, you know, why we're here. We're here for the traffic collision, and those comments are inappropriate. Okay, so although we want to collect the information, you have to let them know that you're not going to be influenced, and you appreciate. I think officers should, and we don't have an obligation. But if you get an opportunity, you get an opportunity to educate. At every opportunity, you get a chance to educate, and that's something we should do.
The community trusts us. The community knows that the police department is there to be unbiased investigators and protect their rights and their safety. And if we're allowing that type of behavior to go on in our presence, it's something that will certainly send a message that we can be swayed or that we tolerate such behavior.
If that's your beat and you don't fix it now, you're coming back to this disturbance later. This is going to fester into who knows what. Maybe it's just a continuing series of calls of, annoyance calls, or she looked at me weird or said something to me or whatever, but it could turn into a point of violence. That's how these things sometimes start. So it's poor tactics and poor forward thinking. As I mentioned earlier, you got to think 3 or 4 steps ahead. Everything has an after effect. Every action has a reaction, and it has a connected issue that comes out of it. So you can't just think of it as, I'm going to handle this call and move on.
2 Middle Eastern males dressed in robes, last seen walking in the park near Edison Western Power Plant.
Copy 10-4, en route. Let's go check it out.
As peace officers, we are required to make rapid decisions on a daily basis. Oftentimes, we don't have all the facts when responding to a call, but we are always required to plan and implement our actions with the information we do have. Take a look at this scenario. How would you handle this call? What decisions would you make after reaching the location? And how would your actions impact the community?
Hello? Hi, I'm over here at the power plant at Cannon Park, and there's 2 Middle Eastern gentlemen, and they're sitting on the bench, and I'm just a little concerned. They're just sitting there talking. It looks like they're drinking coffee. It looks like one of them's wearing a white robe, and the other gentleman is wearing a brown robe. They're both wearing hats with sunglasses. I do not see any weapons, no. I'm probably going to be leaving soon because I'm here with my kids at the park. I don't feel too safe. All right, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
3 Sam 22, suspicious activity. 2 Middle Eastern males dressed in robes, last seen walking in the park near Edison Western Power Plant, 5600 Grantland Avenue. RP does not want contact.
Copy 10-4, en route. Let's go check it out.
So what do you think? It sounds a little suspicious, don't you?
Yeah, but when I was in Iraq, these gentlemen always wear this traditional garb. It's probably nothing, that's what they do.
Yeah, but being so close to a power plant, I think it sounds a little suspicious.
Yeah, but just because they're dressed in that type of attire doesn't mean, something's going on. But hey, let's go check it out.
Okay, let's go.
لازم هذا النشاط مستمر 24 اور مفتوح هو.
Okay, there they are.
How do you want to handle this? How do you want to handle this?
So how do you want to handle it? This is your call. How are we going to handle it?
The passenger officer, he made a lot of good valid points, and he had been deployed and whatnot, so he could understand it. But I mean, the female officer did on her own end well too, the suspiciousness or whatnot. But when you think about it, it's a park next to a power plant, and they're just having a cup of coffee. And I mean, to be honest with you, going up to that right there, it would be kind of hard to contact them because they're just walking away, and they just have their coffee, and they just seem like they're just going about their normal day.
I don't understand even, how would that be a call? The dispatcher, I mean, what's the criminal act?
Well, let's say it is a call, and different agencies handle things differently. So purposes of discussion here for what we're talking about, let's say it is a call for service. I get that you say it might not be, but let's say it is. How would we handle it? What would you do?
Well, we get them sometimes of suspicious activities, somebody taking pictures of the new courthouse. Roll up on them, just talk to them normally. Hey, how's your day going? What are you guys doing? Okay, if nothing really sets you off, you can just, nothing's wrong. It's just people out in the park. You don't really have to tip them off, hey, somebody called in because of your nationality or what you're wearing. That you're sitting next to a power plant, they think you're suspicious because of that. There's no real reason to even set them off to that. But just through your own development of talking to them and processing how they're giving you feedback and everything else can determine how far you're going to go with it.
Okay.
I think something like that is more of just like the officer said, just a casual contact conversation.
Consensual encounter.
Yeah, with just two people from the neighborhood or whatnot, and you would just simply gauge it from that. That contact to me literally looked like it would be all of maybe 20 seconds.
Okay. You had said that it looks like a consensual encounter.
Well, that's how I'd handle it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, so how would you handle that call?
Well, because
What
just
would you say
because
to 'em?
somebody's suspicious, it's not a crime. Okay, so if you want to get there, do your due diligence, and at least contact them for calling party purposes. Just conduct a consensual encounter, talk to them, see what they're up to. And if there's nothing there, there's nothing there.
Let me ask you this. We're looking at this as an isolated incident, one call for service, where we go out, we make this consensual contact, maybe don't even tell them why we're doing it, just, hey, how you doing? You having a good day at the park? What happens if this isn't an isolated incident? These guys go there for coffee every day. What happens if we get a call every day or every other day? And every day or every other day, the cops are rolling out there, getting out of their car, walking up to them in the park and saying, hey, how you doing? And then getting back in the car and driving away.
Well, I think that's hard because we have to, on our end, still do our job and still make contact or due diligence for the people that you're serving for. But I feel like if it's like my fellow officers here said, if the contact's going casual, then that's no problem, and they would be understanding, and it seems like they're okay. If they're defensive, then that's okay too. You just have to explain yourself and try to see on their level and have an understanding with them. And for the most part, you can speak to people and let them know that, you know, my job is just to answer the calls. I don't make the calls. I'm here because somebody had made a call, and I'm sorry that I'm taking up your time. And it seems like you're just having coffee, and I hope you have a nice day. You can change people's attitudes by the way you treat them.
What are some things that you might say to them that would not be adversarial, wouldn't look like it's the police that are generating this call, and let them know why we're out there? What might you say to them?
Pointing out the power plant. That maybe that is a suspicious area. They've been having issues with several different people. And maybe just let them know that we've been looking out for the power plant. We have people tagging it. We have people coming around and taking photos. People in the neighborhood, they just know that the power plant has been an issue right now, so they're just a little bit more on alert.
Okay.
That might make them feel a little
ask
better.
them too if they've seen anything suspicious.
Yeah.
Okay. Why would you ask them if they've seen anything suspicious?
Because it doesn't necessarily mean that we're there to talk to you because somebody else thinks you're suspicious. Typically, if you stand by and you watch, you can tell if somebody's doing something suspicious right when you get on scene. Okay, so if you stand back and watch a little bit and see, and if you obviously see that they're not doing anything suspicious, they're just sitting there drinking coffee, go and make contact, see if they've seen anything, you know, that they deem suspicious, and kind of fixes both issues, meaning you address a call, you saw a fact with your own eyes, you didn't see anything suspicious, and at the same time involve them in the fact that there could be something suspicious if they saw anything.
Okay, very good, very good. Let me ask you this. The female officer felt that maybe there was something suspicious about it. Could that be in some way that she has some biases about what's going on or preconceived opinions?
Mm-hmm. It could be. It could also be that a lot of times you should go to a call a little bit more on the higher alert and go sometimes. So, you know, you take, like my partner Sarah said, sometimes you go to a call and you sit back and you see what's going on. And other times, you know, you have to kind of be alerted when you go. And then it's like, I'd rather be a little bit more overly alert and trying to figure out, or overly suspicious and be able to bring down, than be that person that's going complacent into some kind of scenario or situation and have to raise my guard high.
So a stereotype is a preconceived notion about an individual, or that's then sort of expanded to a whole group of people. And you know, people talk about positive stereotypes. In my mind, there's not really such a thing as a positive stereotype, because even those so-called positive stereotypes have real negative consequences to them.
Prejudice is taking it a step further. It's the next layer on this continuum, if you will. Stereotype is a fixed thought. Prejudice is the feeling or the judgment or the feeling associated to the thought. And many times these two, stereotype and prejudice, will go hand in hand. I'll see somebody or a group, boom, automatically formulate a thought about that person, and then follow up real quick with the feeling, I bet you this person is this way. I bet you this person is that way. And I say that everybody, just like stereotype, has prejudices, whether we want to recognize that or agree with it or not.
And an officer who's sent to a call like that has to recognize that they carry a lot of responsibility. They're trying to satisfy two sides to an argument here. First is the person who called, who clearly feels that there's some kind of a danger, and the officers have to acknowledge that and do what they can to satisfy that need. On the other hand, you have these two gentlemen who are sitting in the park, clearly doing nothing but drinking coffee and talking, and they have the right to be there just like anybody else. And the impact that that officer's contact has on them could change their lives.
One thing that officers sometimes make the mistake, I've seen officers will say that if a person calls and says that I see two guys look suspicious, that constitutes reasonable suspicion to stop them because somebody thinks they're suspicious. And that's not legal reasonable suspicion.
I think there are a multitude of ways in which officers can handle that situation. Everything from asking the dispatcher to call back the calling party to get more information, to try to make a connection to what these people are doing specifically to crime. And the other thing is to get out of the car and take a casual walk in the park to see if just a casual walk in the park without contact can glean any information in regards to what activity, if anything, that these individuals are involved in. So the conversation that the two officers are having in the car is a healthy one, and I think that speaks to what we've been talking about in regards to peer-to-peer accountability, having the insight, the introspect to have those conversations. And what's happening here is that they're having this discussion, these two officers are having this discussion, which is a healthy one, which is providing her with some insight.
Well, I hear it said, and I've seen it work, is to not just interact with people when there is a call. If there's a Muslim community center in the next block, if there's a mosque, and if you're working in that area, have you knocked on the door and talked to the imam? Have you just been there? Have you just walked in and said hello when there was no call? Then again, a week later, you see that person on the street or you see that person on a call, you're going to have history.
We found it in our city that as a result of some critical incidents in our city where there was both bias on the public and bias on the police, and the responses when they came together it demonstrated those bias, that having healthy conversations at the point of impact really resulting in the birthing of a better community dialogue.
We need to be able to articulate that what these people are doing is connected to criminal activity. And in this scenario, two gentlemen of Middle Eastern descent sitting, engaging in conversation, having coffee in a park does not connect to criminal activity.
I know that kid. He goes to school at the Valley. I don't know. He looks suspicious to me. Let's see what he's up to.
Ultimately, law enforcement may be judged more by our relationship with our community than by any other measurable factor. Building this relationship with the community and its leaders falls more within the control of an officer than many other things in their career. Being fair and impartial goes a long way in supporting this process. Developing a positive relationship can lead to better information, better investigations, more arrests, and increased officer safety. Remember, a strong relationship with the community can take years to develop and one incident to damage or destroy.
Why is it every time you see a black person, they're running? I know that kid. He goes to school at the Valley. I don't know. He looks suspicious to me. Let's see what he's up to. Hey, come here, kid. Put your hands on the hood of the car right here. Get home. Stop right here. Put your hands right there. Why are you running like that, man?
My mom, she called the school and told me my grandmother is on hospice, all right? They think she's dying.
Okay, take a deep breath and relax, okay? First things first. You have anything illegal in your pockets or anything like that?
No.
Anything you're not supposed to have?
No. All right, I gotta get home to see if they're okay.
First of all, take it easy, take a deep breath. Where are you coming from?
I'm coming from school.
Okay, and where are you going?
I'm just trying to go home.
Do you live around here? I've never seen you in the neighborhood before.
Yes.
You live close by?
I live close. I live a couple of blocks away.
That's why you're running the way you are?
Yes.
Wait, hey Matt, leave your phone alone, okay? You keep reaching for it. I see that it's ringing and it's your mom, but right now, you're not going to take the call.
I need to take this.
Right now, I'm in charge.
Hey.
I need you guys to get back.
What's the problem here?
Take a few steps back from me. Give us some space, please.
I know this young man. He hasn't done anything wrong. I've known him and his family since he was a little kid.
I understand that, but I'm trying to figure out why he's running the way he is and not in school right now.
And I'm trying to figure out why you're harassing him. Can't you see he's just on his way home from school?
That's what we're trying to determine. That's what we're trying to figure out.
Officer Eden, this is exactly what we've been talking about in our community meetings. I don't understand. Why? Why is this happening again?
Ms. Wesley, if you just step back for a second, once we're done, I'll discuss it with you.
I mean, this doesn't help. You know this isn't going to help, right? Unbelievable. I cannot believe this is happening. We've had so many community meetings about this, meeting after meeting about working with the community, and then this happens again.
And you know, they're still stopping and searching black kids. They haven't done anything wrong.
I know.
So what are your impressions about the primary officer here and how he handled this call or made this stop in the first place?
He made it off the race.
He made it off a race?
Because his initial comment was, why every time you see a black person, they're running. And he detained him.
What does that mean to you, that he made it off a race? What?
That very statement in itself.
I'm sorry, again?
That very statement in itself. He singled him out because he was black, and he stopped him.
How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel sad for law enforcement in that particular situation, because it's not building trust in the community. And then when the neighbors came across, they feel it. They've already had community meetings about that, and now they're seeing it, witnessing happening right in front of them.
Okay, the kid's running. Maybe I might go ahead and check him out. Does it seem pretty clear cut to you once you start making the contact here with what little you know that it's probably okay?
You figure it out in 10 seconds of the contact that he's okay and let him go about his business. There's no reason to keep holding him up. Because if you have that reasonable suspicion, which I don't agree with the stop in general, but if you did for some reason actually feel like you needed to make that stop, you can determine pretty quickly that he just needs to go. I mean, if it was me and I just held this kid up, then I'd just be like, hey, how far do you live and can we give you a ride real quick? That's really simple too. And that's how you change what was maybe a bad decision into trying to be a little bit more trusting and helping them out, maybe helping the bond between you and people.
So is this officer demonstrating bias?
Oh,
yeah.
Definitely, right?
Definitely.
Do you think he knows he's demonstrating bias on a conscious level?
I don't think he does, especially with his partner being black. I just don't think he does.
How is that possible?
Ignorance, yeah.
Ignorance, what do you mean ignorance?
Somebody's that dead set on, instead of looking at the facts of what the guy's telling him, he's looking at the race and he's sticking to it, okay? Call it hard-headedness, ignorance, like I said. Fact is, you got to be able to shut that down once you've figured out that you're wrong. And if you're not able to do that, it's because, you're stuck in it, so.
Okay.
I also put some of it on his partner, too, for not stepping up and saying something.
Let's talk about that now. What should the partner have done in this situation? Go ahead.
All he has to do is say, no, hey, we don't have to stop that guy. He ain't doing nothing.
So he says he knows that kid.
Him. Okay, if there's really nothing going on and he kind of knows his partner is working on that bias side, he should have enough fortitude to jump in and stop him. Hey, what you doing? Not good. Not cool. We're not going to go that way.
Okay. So how would you do that?
He just sat there silent and didn't do anything.
As an officer, if you're seeing this type of biased behavior that's being demonstrated by a partner or another officer that you're interacting with in the field, do you think you have an obligation to maybe step in and say something to them?
Yeah.
Okay. You're nodding your head yes. Why?
Well, yeah, I mean, what he did was wrong. So I would feel that, you have to address that. You have to have that communication with your partner, especially if you're working with a person every day. you don't want your partner making wrong decisions, so you want to kind of steer them on the right path.
Okay. Why don't you want them making wrong decisions?
It affects you.
Because it's just going to continue.
Yeah.
It's going to continue. It's going to affect you. It's going to affect the city, the community.
The trust between the community and the police department.
Okay, it's going to affect the trust between the community and the police department. How is it going to do that?
Well, if the community witnesses, wrongdoings by the police department, or they believe it's something that's wrong, that's going to get out. That if someone from the community witnesses something wrong, they're going to discuss those matters with other community members in that area, and that's going to expand.
Well, and the neighbor brought it up too. We've been having community meetings about this, and why is this still happening? So obviously it's already an issue that they're seeing, I guess, as a community. Maybe that's not reaching the officers, or maybe it's only reaching certain officers, because it looked like she was only directing her question to the partner.
So what I'm hearing from you is a lot of impact that this could have on the community and the way the community interacts with law enforcement. Let's look at those neighbors as they came up. What did you see in the way that they were interacting with the police and what they felt based on what they were seeing?
They were supportive, but disappointed.
Plus, that kid's going to have a permanent opinion now. He's been wrongfully detained, and he's never going to forget that stop. And he's going to talk about that stop to his friends, his families, and other people in the community. And he will forever feel a certain way because now he's been wronged.
Okay.
That's why, like my partner said earlier, those officers, they should have backtracked a little bit. They should have said, hey, okay, we made a mistake or whatnot. Hey, we see that you're on your way, going to your grandmother's house or whatnot. Let's help try to right this wrong. Let's get you there a little bit quicker.
Do you think that, by and large, the good people in the community want to trust the police?
Yes.
For the majority, yeah.
Why? Why do you think they want to trust the police?
Because they need us. And when they need help, that's who they turn to. On their worst day, I'm who shows up. So they want to think that we're going to do the right thing and make sure that everything's okay, and that we're going to bring justice. We're not going to just bring our biases and personal opinions into things.
Okay, very good. Now, do you think that the entire department in this scenario holds those same biases that this officer held?
No.
Okay. But what impact on the entire department does this one officer's behavior have with the community?
Everything. It's not even on that department. It's if an incident happens, it looks bad for law enforcement across the board. It's not on just a department. It's on police departments, sheriffs, corrections. Everybody that has anything to do with law enforcement across the nation is going to be affected by incidents.
If you were working with someone who said, people around here don't deserve dignity, people around here are criminals or whatever, is that okay? Is that mindset okay? Can a person be a good police officer and think that way? Even though we see the worst in a community, and given that we see the worst things in a community, even still, can a person be effective if they think that folks around here are so low they don't deserve dignity?
Building relationships with the community is really the foundation of how we can be effective as an organization, because we want people to give us really good, detailed information about the crimes occurring in their communities, about who's doing those crimes, and if you don't have a relationship with the community, you're just not going to get that kind of information.
If people in a community view their law enforcement officers as someone who's going to do the right thing for the right reason, they're going to support them. And how you behaved every moment until that moment is going to determine how the community responds to a situation where you're in danger.
Well, the discussion kind of went us versus them. So we created that us versus them scenario because the guys in uniform all sit on one side of the table, members from the community all sit on another side of the table. Instead of thinking collectively about the issue, it was the community, telling us all the things that were wrong.
His interaction with the public is not defensible. They're not in a gunfight. It's not 3 a.m. with 1,000 people around. It's 2 obvious residents across the street who are simply expressing themselves. There's just so many better ways to handle that, to interact with everybody involved, that the officer is just a problem from start to finish.
when you do have the luxury of a partner, especially somebody that's an equal partner, not necessarily a training unit, there's an added responsibility to make sure you're checking each other. Most officers these days that work patrol work one-officer cars, and as a result, they have to rely on themselves to do that self-check. But if you have a partner who you work in the same car with, or somebody that you work the same beat with, or you work closely with, it's critical that you speak to that person, that you tell them what you're thinking, and that person has the ability to ask you the tough questions. And when they do ask the tough questions, that you don't dismiss them.
One bad experience, one bad contact can decay many, many years of progress that an organization or department has made with their community. And inherently, it's going to happen. But the goal is to have enough deposits built up to help mitigate the hit that the agency is going to take when those bad incidents come up.
We live in a subculture, police subculture, where loyalty and being a team player and all these things we're so used to valuing, but they weigh against tapping somebody on the shoulder when you think they're doing something wrong, because it just is a clash there. And let's be honest, it's difficult. That's not just, some people say, oh, that's not hard, but it is hard.
So the responsibilities that we have to each other as law enforcement officers is tremendous, and the impact of us not doing something can have negative consequences for a very long time. It's a top-to-bottom commitment throughout the organization that we as individuals must remain truly committed to challenging one another when we're faced with those types of situations.
There are two very difficult things for a law enforcement officer. One is when they don't recognize they're engaged in bias-based policing until after they've taken an action. And then in retrospect, they say, ugh, I think I did that based upon some bias I had. And they feel very badly about that. The other one is when they see their partner engage in bias-based policing. And this is someone who they've come to depend upon, someone who has their back, and they'll watch them do something, or they'll sense they're doing something. And their first reaction is to protect their partner and kind of ignore what it is they're sensing or seeing. But they have to rise above that, and they have to sometimes report their partner, confront their partner. There are many different things they have to do.
Peer-to-peer is where it's at, because if your partner is the person that knows you better than anyone else on the department, and if you can have those conversations in the locker room, in the car, then they don't have to go past that.
That's an opportunity where a conversation has to take place, and you can't let it go. Once again, silence is acceptance, and now by not checking them or having that conversation, it sends a message to this person, to this officer, that what they did or said was okay.
The community has to have a voice, because I really believe the community sees more than the police will ever see. I believe the community knows more. When shootings occur, the community knows. They won't tell them no. When somebody's nephew or grandson or son runs home and they know they've done something wrong, they know. But very few will tell, because we've not done a good enough job at building that kind of trust.
The individual officer holds the key to developing that respect and that trust. The individual officer is going to build those relationships. People might trust the organization as a whole when it comes to calling and knowing an officer is going to come, but people will trust the officer on an individual level to know that when that officer comes, they're going to get the right kind of service.
That what you say oftentimes is much more hurtful than any act of theft, vandalism, and other crimes. Those can be forgotten. You suffer discrimination, that carries with you throughout your life.
Establishing a relationship and connecting with the community is equally as important. You can solve more crimes, you get more involvement from the community, people come out and be witnesses.
When we look at policing today, most police professionals recognize that how one measures the success of a police organization is the relationship they have with the community. And although we've made inroads in regards to this, in regards to the discussions that officers are having, I think we've made a lot of progress. But I think it, just like Professional development, we need to constantly revisit this topic. We need to constantly be checking ourselves because we all are susceptible to the blandishments of stereotype and prejudice and acting out on our biases.
Every community has members who can assist us in our work. Examples include members of a community church, local business owners, or simply a person who calls your beat their home. Taking the time and making the effort to connect with people in the community can have a number of positive effects on our daily police work, and over time, make your work more effective and safer. The following is a short segment taken from a roundtable discussion of community members and law enforcement discussing approaches that they have used in their neighborhoods to create stronger and safer communities.
Bishop Todd, talk about some of the things that are working when you're attempting to establish a relationship between the police and the community.
I have a brother who's a retired policeman, and the very public event, which was the fair they would have every year, he was over that. And one lady approached him one day and said, here's my son, and I told him he's going to, this officer, he's going to arrest you. He's going to arrest you. And my brother said, no, I'm going to arrest you for telling him that, because you're giving him a negative connotation of police already at a young age, 3 or 4 years old. He's thinking police are just here to arrest me, accost me. I'm also here to protect him and to help him and to encourage him if I can. So I see it from both sides of the badge, because my brother was a policeman, and even when people are approached by police, you got to understand the severity of the situation of, not knowing if, something is going to trigger off or if it's just a normal routine stop and things of that sort. We've had our watch commander come and be with our congregation, spend time with our congregation. He and I would do lunch maybe twice a month, just sit down and talk just about our families. How's your wife? How's your kids? Things like that. And just really develop a rapport to where it's not like, here comes the police. Like, no, oh, here's the police. Just make it a more pleasant thing. And then when things happen in the community, sometimes people even tip off, if you will, because they have that relationship now. And they feel like this guy's here to protect me, not to hurt me. So the last commander that we had, he's now a chief of police in Modesto. I was even invited to do the invocation. So that's how close our relationship is now. And the new one that's there now, we had a reception for him at our church, a welcome in reception. So I think it's those kind of things we have to do to forge and be more proactive instead of reactive after things have happened. Then we all want to come together and, who's the bad guy, who's the good guy, who did right, who did wrong. Let's establish a relationship, because I think relationship makes a great difference in community.
Tracy, talk a little bit about your Weed and Seed program.
One of the things we focused on was really bringing what I like to call the community anchors together. And so we implemented this program in our most violent crime police beat. And we would literally meet monthly to talk about what's going on in the community, both bad and good, upcoming events, kind of what's been happening out in the neighborhood. And the very first meeting, people said, I didn't even know our principal. I didn't know the beat officer. I didn't even know you were the pastor of the church up the street. And so just forming those relationships over 5 years really created community and camaraderie.
Azim, talk a little bit about the advantage of this and then the outcome of this communication.
And I think, relationships life is about relationships. And it's pretty more visceral to me because 19 years ago I lost my son, and he was a student at San Diego State University and worked as a pizza delivery man, and he was lured to a bogus address by a youth gang. And there were 4 youth involved. 3 of them were 14, the leader was 18, and a 14-year-old shot and killed him in a gang initiation. So kind of needless to say, brought my world to a crashing halt. But I took a different response. I saw that there were victims at both ends of the gun. So 9 months later, I started the foundation because my attitude was that violence is a learned behavior. Non-violence can also be a learned behavior because no kid was born violent. I forgave my son's killer and reached out to the grandfather and guardian. We're still together 18 years later. He's like a brother to me. So talk about relationship. And I would never have met this man had his grandson not killed my son. And with the grace of God, the program is done really well. We're very active in middle school, and we're teaching these principles of nonviolence. And I think it's very exciting to me that not only are these principles teachable, the kids are very hungry for them. I believe in the work that I've done. Well, I've created good outcomes, both in the prevention area and the intervention area. Yet I know that no single organization has the complete solution. So this Read and Seat program that Tracy talked about, the work that the bishop is doing and the work that you're doing, it shows that that collectively we do have the complete solution.
When we are talking about the way youth and the work that Azim is doing of behavior modification, I think that's so critical. But I think the onus also needs to be a shared one, and that's really looking at the paradigm shift in the way we do business. So adults should also bear a weight of being able to stop and maybe reframe or redirect. And I say that as a whole, not specific to any law enforcement agency, but we do it as community members, we do it as community-based organizations. We're all suspect to someone, I guess. And so for me, it's looking at what's the paradigm shift and what's the capacity that we have to be able to redirect how we are training our adults in whatever industry that might be. Particularly in this case, law enforcement. It's what does community do to support that paradigm shift?
It makes a difference in community. Lieutenant Skaya, maybe you can talk about the advantage that police officers have when that relationship is formed.
Establishing a relationship and connecting with the community is equally as important for police agencies. You can solve more crimes, you get more involvement from the community, people come out and be witnesses, and just the police and the community working together just to solve the problems in the community. I think over time it's evolved with police departments. I think now we've kind of instilled on our officers volume of work over quality of work, and I think a police officer wants to do the right thing and clear the next call and do lots of work, where we'd like to see them kind of slow down, get out of their car, walk the beat, go meet the community members, the business members, and establish that one-on-one connection and get to know the people they're policing. It's mutually beneficial. The people they're policing. It's mutually beneficial.
Why is it important for law enforcement to reach out to the community and try and build a relationship?
Because the community wants that trust.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
The community wants that trust.
Okay.
That they feel that their police are involved. And it's like what you said, not just policing, but involved as we're human beings too.
What does being involved do to help build trust?
It makes it to where the community will come to you. Like, whether if a crime has occurred and they feel they want to call they feel the need to call the police, or if, there's just something where maybe they want the police to reach out maybe to their youth or something else. It builds that bond.
Okay.
Because a lot of times all they see is the uniform and the badge. They don't know the person that puts it on every day. They don't know the person of who you really are. All they see every day is me, fellow officers wearing the same uniform and putting the badge on. So they think everybody's the same exact person, where there's nobody the same at all.
And when they see you wearing that uniform, what are you usually doing?
Working.
Which means what in relation to the community?
We could be chasing people. We could be putting their mom in jail, putting their dad in jail, putting their brother in jail. Anything. Or you're taking the time to actually just sit there and talk to them. There's been several occasions where you're in some of the worst parts of the city and you just take time and sit there and talk to people like they're normal people. Mm-hmm. Sit there, relax. If you got glasses on, take off your glasses. Just sit there and talk to them so they can look you in the eye. You look them in the eye and you just talk about stuff that doesn't even matter. It could be sports. Just find something to relate to them on a human level.
And what does that do? If you take your glasses off, if you talk with them about something that's a human level, what does that do with the two of you?
It just breaks down that barrier and gives you that relationship on something that you relate on, other than just crime and, hey, are you a suspect?
Okay, really good, very good comment.
Generally, people have this thinking of, when they call the police, something bad has happened. So maybe to kind of change that a little bit, say, hey, a police officer is a human being, talk to me on a human level.
So why is it important for the community to see officers other than when things are bad?
Or that trust that they know that when you call them, you're going to do the right thing, or whatever the case might be.
Okay, it builds that trust. That's good. What about this? We have officers in our department that it's their job to go out and build trust. They're in a special unit and they handle those things. What do you guys think of that? Does that absolve you of responsibility for outreach to the community?
No.
No, because that's only one officer. I mean, people see them, obviously, as an outreach tool, but I think people make the more of the connection with an actual, the beat officer, the patrol officer, who's there day in, day out. I think they have a greater connection with that.
With those specialized units at a community meeting, you may see them, once a month? Whereas we're going to be there at least 16 days a month. So they're seeing us a lot more. And I think even like the community programs that used to be more readily available, like PAL with the Police Athletic League with the younger kids, just being able to interact and be with officers that are out of uniform and just throwing a ball around, boxing, playing soccer, and just doing other things rather than just police work.
Good, real good. Hey, we've just heard some very powerful stories about some people who have created projects in the community as a result of things that have happened in their life and to support their passions. As a patrol officer, what can you do to support a person's passion for a program that they've developed to help the community?
If you know a victim of violent crimes or family members of a victim, for example, homicide, and he or she's having issues dealing with the incident, you can always refer that person to one of these advocates or experts to seek counseling, guidance, or to deal with what happened. So that makes that person feel more important and with a sense of purpose.
It makes the person that has the program that's demonstrating their passion feel more important?
Yes.
How does it do that?
Because they will feel that I'm helping, my experiences are helping someone else out to deal with whatever incident.
Is it important for us as the police department to support these programs and support that passion?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it just takes being excited for them. You go to community meetings and people are really excited about what they have, and be excited with them and also hear them out. Sometimes it's just letting people speak and actually listening to what they have to say. And they actually, a lot of times people have good suggestions for us, or they're just looking for something that you might think was so silly or not that big of a deal, and it might actually be something that really actually has a huge impact on them.
We recognize that our partnership with the community is a necessity. It's not a program that we run, and it's not something we do because we're supposed to. It's something that we do because we won't be successful without it. They are the stakeholders.
I think when we look at the basic patrol officer, when they're not engaged in calls for service, when they're not engaged in making arrests, when they're not engaged in conducting traffic stops, there's opportunities to get out of their car, to build those relationships, to conduct those walk and talks, walk the beat, introduce themselves to business owners, introduce themselves, to get out and engage the community in the absence of crisis.
The beat officer, those folks are the eyes and ears of the agency. I mean, they're the ones that know their street corners, they know the neighbors, they can spot something out of place or something that needs to be addressed a lot faster than anybody else, and sort of empowering them to do whatever they see fit to build that trust, whether it's walking, just taking time to walk around the neighborhood, whether it's grabbing a cup of coffee with somebody.
Our police now don't just show up at a time of crisis. They really are proactive in showing up in just times of convenience or fun, or if they're in a neighborhood, introducing themselves, events at our parks, and they'll stop by our churches, because we've learned from experience that if we're going to create a bridge between both biases, public, police, pastors, community, that it's going to take a consistent effort, not just a reactive effort when situations are bad, or response to when situations are bad.
If they see the police as a third party, a neutral person that only shows up when something bad happens, we're not going to break down the us versus them. If we as police departments don't get out of our police cars and walk the neighborhoods once in a while, if we don't get out into the schools and meet the kids and through the kids meet the families and become a resource for them to help address their issues that they're facing, we won't break the us versus them mentality. And it really takes efforts on both sides.
The spiritual, political, and social governance of a community is critical. I believe the synchronicity of that is indispensable. In our city, we have something called pastors, public, and police. And we do things to intentionally integrate the three so that they're visible. I believe that when those three overlap in a community, we have perfect providence in that community because we all become we have a single mission, and common ground brings common goals, and it just increases the great fabric of safety and sanctity in that city.
You know, the spiritual community can play a vital role in improving police-community relations. You know, typically speaking, on a Sunday, people go to their respective places of worship, and the pastors and the priests have audiences. And they can be our spokespersons. They can be our cheerleaders if we allow them. But in order for that to happen, we've got to break down the barriers. We've got to bring them in, give them a place at the table, if you will, and develop those relationships.
Well, what officers sometimes realize and sometimes don't realize is that there's an ongoing history between a group of people, a neighborhood, a community, and their police department. If I transfer into a new area and I'm just there to do police work the way I learned it in the police academy or from my experience, that's me. But the people in this community have history. They have history with their law enforcement, history with their police department, their sheriff's department. And everything that happens adds to that history, good or bad. So there's a context there.
So what can the community do? The term police-community relations implies that it's a two-way street. And historically and traditionally, I think it's always been felt that it's the police department's responsibility to go out and build those relationships and build those bridges. It's a two-way process. They're all stakeholders in this together.
The chief, the management, the command staff, they're not going to be the ones to make the change. It's going to be the individual officer and the unique experience that officer provides to an individual person. And as you multiply that over multiple experiences, the culture of a police department and the culture of a community will start to change. And the benefit of the doubt will suddenly shift from negative to positive when it comes to the way the community views the police department.
You know, over the years as a supervisor and later as a commander, I would formally and informally question my officers, and I'd ask this pointed question: would all of your jobs be a heck of a lot easier if you had the respect and trust of the communities that you serve? And inherently the answer is always yes. Absolutely. From an officer safety standpoint, from a standpoint of dealing with the community in times of crisis, you can have folks become your allies in times of crisis if you've taken the time to build the foundations and build those partnerships.
We have come to the end of this training. On behalf of the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, I'd like to thank you for your participation. Also, be sure to review the Final Thoughts tab at the bottom of the main menu screen. This section provides closing thoughts on our topic. This course is designed to be facilitated in a group setting. Before conducting a group training session, you should review and become familiar with the material in this program. Open and print the facilitator guide and go through the program yourself before putting the course on for others. As the facilitator, your job is to engage your students in constructive, free-flowing discussion on the key learning points of this training topic. Use the tools provided in this program to stimulate critical thinking and situational awareness in the group by viewing the scenarios, expert interviews, and discussion videos. Questions and activities are provided to promote group interaction and discussion on the training topic. Customize the learning experience by applying your agency policy and procedures to the training concepts. Segments in this program accommodate shorter training periods, such as during roll call training sessions. Track your students' progress through the entire program. As the facilitator, you need to know that your students have gone through the material and sufficiently mastered the learning objectives. Once the students have successfully completed the program, submit your training roster to POST for CPT credit. Following this plan will help to create an environment for the debate of ideas, sharing of wisdom based on experience, and encourage a greater understanding of local policies and procedures. We wish you and your agency all the best in successfully implementing this program. This course is designed to be facilitated in a group setting. However, when that is not possible, here are some instructions for getting the most out of this training program so that you may receive continuing professional training or CPT credit. Obtain permission from your agency trainer or supervisor to view the course for training credit, and let them know you will be viewing the program. This will give them some time to review the course themselves and be prepared to discuss it with you later on. Open and print the student study guide so that you can take notes and fill out responses to the questions and activities. Think about how the training concepts presented apply to your agency policy and procedures. You may view the scenarios, expert interviews, and discussion videos several times to assist you in providing responses. Keep track of your progress as you complete the segments in this course. When you have finished the entire program, inform the trainer that you would like to review the course with them. Send them your completed student study guide prior to meetings so that they have had a chance to review your responses. Scheduling a face-to-face meeting with your trainer is the best way to review your work on the course. If this is not possible, arrange a phone call meeting. But in either case, allow time to review and discuss your responses. Your supervisor or trainer may require additional work or feedback from you before giving CPT credit. They may want to evaluate your understanding of how the training points relate to your agency policy, for instance. It is their discretion in determining whether you have adequately completed the course. Following these instructions will give you the best opportunity not only to receive CPT credit, but to grasp the training concepts, benefit from the experience of others, and apply the training and experience to your local policy and procedures. We wish you and your agency all the best in successfully completing this course.
Take a deep breath. Where are you coming from?
I'm coming from school.
And where are you going?
I'm just trying to go home.
And I'm trying to figure out why you're harassing him.
What I always hate to see is an officer that walks away from this training and says, you know, this is really good training for that guy. This is really good training for those people over there. They need that. What I need to know is that an officer's walking away saying, that was really good training for me.
When we look at bias-based policing, everybody in a police organization has a role, from the policymakers to the line officers and everyone in between.
There's a macro goal and a micro goal. And so at the micro level, it's how we as individuals make decisions. Are we, after our stops, after our enforcement activities, are we thinking about how we got there, why we got there? What were the reasons we used to make the stop? What were the reasons we used to make that decision? What was it that backed up the hunch? What was it that backed up the hair on the back of our neck standing up that just didn't make me feel right about this stop? What was it that led to our decision making? Those are very important questions that must be asked on a regular basis, and we have to be really honest with ourselves. And so the key is, are we making our decisions in the most ethical and fair way that we can? And that's really what the foundation of it is. If we can't answer yes to both of those questions, we're really not doing our job in the most efficient and best way possible.
I think with law enforcement and with everything else, when people become educated and aware, the vast majority of people do better, act better, make better decisions. So there are a few people very few people who have perhaps really bad motives. But the vast majority of people, including in law enforcement, always improve with training, improve with awareness.
You also have to recognize that any skill or any knowledge that we receive in an educational sense is a perishable skill. All right, it's perishable, and it needs to be updated. It needs to be revisited. It needs to be revisited in a contemporary sense because there's other dynamics that we have to deal with. This is not a static subject, right? This is a dynamic subject.
I really believe that what has to happen is we have to continue these conversations that take us beyond the pessimistic view of bias-based policing. And what I mean by the pessimistic view is that it doesn't pertain to me, we've got it under control. Because if we do, it will continue to veil or to mask the problems that have already been encountered in communities. It'll sustain them. But if we can get to the point where we say we always have to keep this a conversation that's relative, then we'll find that we can move beyond it a lot faster and more effectively. That we won't just mask it and cover it up and use the proper protocol and language. It will literally be eradicated. And if we can get this eradicated, we'll find that the community and the police and the public and pastors and everybody involved, we will have just such a better place to live.
When you've made a connection in the community as an officer or as a department, collectively, the department has made a great effort to really connect with the people that they serve. When things go bad, when you're having to meet people on their worst day, you immediately have a bond of trust, and your ability to do your job effectively and their ability to get the help they need is compounded tenfold, 100-fold.
None of us like to see ourselves or would call ourselves as being unfair. And we'd like to see ourselves as unbiased. But the reality of it is we have to constantly be introspective throughout our career, because we grow and learn as individuals, and we can learn things that feed previous biases that we're maybe not aware of, or new biases that we form based on experiences that we have.
I believe an officer on a daily basis, in the midst of the insanity that I applaud them for addressing and having to navigate, if they could just take 5 minutes and greet one of the neighbors in their community, park their cars, get out and just walk the neighborhood and say hello to, my name is Officer Sanders, I'll be covering your neighborhood, here's my card. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call me. Or as they see kids playing out on the basketball court, take 30 seconds, go out and just shoot a free throw with them, or have a conversation with them, or introduce themselves, so now that the kids don't grow up thinking that the police are bad.
I think police officers, when they go to work every day and they're in the locker room putting their uniform on, they have one goal, and that's to go home safely and to go home to their families. And I get it. That will probably never change. But I ask them to consider something else. I want to go home at night to my family, but I also want to go home with a clear conscience, knowing that I did the right thing, knowing that I added value to my profession, knowing that I added value to the community. And I think if they can answer those two questions, they'll have a long, successful career.